This is Parker Hesse. This is Sam Branks. You have the pleasure of listening to Hawkeyes and Tallboys. Cheers, motherfuckers.
Welcome to the Hawkeyes and Tallboys podcast, featuring your hosts, Bo Freeborn.
It all comes down to execution. It's about the X's and the O's, not the Jimmy and O's. Come on.
Dylan Pond.
Well, of course. I mean, there's nothing better than being American. So, I mean, this is the greatest feeling in the world. If you don't love it, leave it. USA #1, baby.
And Rob Wall.
I mean, our defense is an absolute vibe, and I'm along for the ride.
So crack a tall boy and go Hawks.
Yeah. Welcome into another episode of Hawkeyes and Tallboys. I'm your host, Rob.
I'm Dylan.
And I'm Bo.
And we'll go ahead and crack a beer, guys. I had to improvise mine because I already cracked it. Well, tonight we are joined by...
Premature cracker, Rob. Premature.
Yeah, I know.
That's okay.
But today we are joined by a journalist, a broadcaster. He's a former D1 college basketball player from Kent State. He is currently working for CBS station, the CBS station in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Please welcome Tanner Castora.
Thank you, fellas, for having me on. I thought it was Tallboys. I'm seeing just a regular beer can here. What's up with that?
Bro,
Well, we ran out of Tallboys a few seasons ago.
Okay, I'll let it slide.
Times are tough, Tanner.
That is true. That is true. Thank you guys for having me on today.
Absolutely.
Man, thanks for coming on.
So Tanner covers the Missouri. Well, you cover the South Dakota State Jackrabbits.
But I do cover the Missouri Valley Conference. Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Actually, my alma mater is in the Missouri Valley Conference, Illinois State Redbirds. Okay. Shout out to the Redbirds in Bloomington Normal. But happy to have you here. We're going to get into this Saturday's game against the South Dakota Jackrabbits. And we kind of want to just get into like a little bit of a preview. We've already had like an episode where we talked about this year's outlook and this year's Hawkeye team. And it honestly, just to put things frankly, it's another Kirk Ferentz team to where it seems that we're probably going to end up relying mostly on our defense this year, guys. And we have just high hopes that our offense will be able to carry the load. But what do you think, Dill? Did I accurately describe this year's Hawkeye team in just a few short sentences?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this defense is going to be, one of the best, if not the best in not only the Big Ten, but, in the entire country as well. So, we talked about it a little bit in our season preview as well, but the most deep defensive line that I've seen in the entire Kirk Ferentz tenure in the past, what has it been? I don't even know. Since 99, 23, 24 years now. Yeah, obviously one of the best linebacking cores in the nation as well. And then, classic Phil Parker coach defense with four returning players and packing that secondary. So, and then Cooper DeJean as well, that got some experience in there last year. So, I think this offense is going to be relying on this defense a little bit. And, if our offense can improve enough to, I'd say even just the top half of FBS, that's going to show up in the win column and add another couple wins that, maybe Iowa isn't necessarily favored in as of right now.
What do you think, Bo?
Yeah, I'm excited. I think obviously there's a lot to be excited for on the defensive side, but don't speak too fast. I think this offensive line is going to be a great cohesive unit. It's obviously going to be a bend but don't break both sides of the ball here. But the more games we get, the more experience we get. This is going to be a fun team to ride with.
Could I ask you guys a quick question?
Sure.
Absolutely.
You guys went to the Big Ten championship last year. You're not ranked in the top 25 this season. You feel a little disrespect from that?
Oh,
Absolutely.
my Atlanta.
I love that question, Tanner. You
Yeah,
literally nailed. You basically everyone who's a Hawkeye fan who's listening is just like, oh
Yeah, that shocked me. I was shocked to see that.
It's just the offense right there. You understand it because that team came out, went 10-2, was setting the world on fire. And then Spencer Petras gets, his shoulder bug. Offensive line starts getting some injuries, and then, looked like shit the last 2 games of the year offensively. So I can see where they're coming from, but I'm with you. It's disrespect, and it's, locker room feel is what I'm hoping to see out of it. And, at preseason rankings, they don't matter, but it hurt. I won't lie. It hurt to see that.
I know that we came in right around like 26, 27, with total coaches' votes, but I really thought we were going to be anywhere from 23 to 25 right there at the end of the season too.
I think last season, go ahead, Dill.
I was just going to say, as long as we're number 1 by the end of the season, that's all I give a shit.
I think we were ranked just inside the top 25 last season, preseason. And obviously we finished first in the Big Ten West, went to the Big Ten championship game, blah, blah. That was a highly publicized game where everyone saw us get our asses kicked. And so I feel like that was like the lasting memory that everybody had. I don't feel like anybody besides Hawkeye fans watched the Citrus Bowl.
Was it Kentucky?
Yep. And
that was a good game if I remember, right?
It was.
Actually, I did watch
Kentucky
that game.
Came back.
Yeah, I do remember that game, yeah.
I felt like that was sort of an afterthought. I feel like our season died on the field in that Big Ten championship game.
That failed halfback pass. I
mean, Aiden Hutchinson.
LJ Scott memories.
Yeah, true. And Aiden Hutchinson is a dog. But that said, guys, obviously there's a lot to look forward to. There's a lot yet to be proven from the Iowa Hawkeyes, obviously, especially in the minds of the Associated Press. This is a team that is going to have to show how good it is on the field. So we're all excited for that, obviously. But one question mark, and part of the reason why we have you here, Tanner, is that we'd love to learn just what makes this South Dakota Jackrabbit team go, and what are we up against this Saturday?
Well, you're asking the right guy. I've been to over 10 practices since they began official practice in the first week of August. So I've studied this team in and out. When I took this job a year and a half ago, one of the reasons I was so excited about it was the opportunity to cover this team. And I'd known about South Dakota State and the FCS. I won't act like I was very familiar with them, but they're a heck of a program. And what people don't understand, in the FCS, everyone knows North Dakota State is the king, right? The past 2 seasons, South Dakota State has toyed with them. They have been the only team who has beaten them. And they beat them last year. And last year, North Dakota State won the national championship by, I think, 30-plus points in the finale. And the only team they lost to was South Dakota State. So it's really a program that, you talk to the kids here, and it's somewhere that you can come and chase your dream. You look at this past NFL draft class. They had a running back, Pierre Strong Jr., drafted in the 4th round. Their quarterback last year he was actually a 6th-year senior, transferred in. It was his 3rd school, got his chance at South Dakota State, performed well. He was drafted in the 7th round by the Pittsburgh Steelers. So there's a lot of talent on this roster, and we'll get into some kids that they have on the roster this year and some names that will be NFL players to come. But it's a legit program, and I would tell people to, it might say FCS in front of their name, but I'd take the Jackrabbits serious.
You look at the coach, John Stegelmeyer. He's been there since 1997, a little bit longer than Kirk, two years longer even. That kind of speaks a little bit to his coaching philosophy and efforts in recruiting over the last 25, 26 years too. How do you see him making a big difference? But just even between the last couple of years and getting that team propelling a little bit, better than that North Dakota State team.
That's exactly what they're aiming for. That's their standard. That's what they're trying to get over. You mentioned Kirk Ferentz. I was talking to Coach Stick today a little in the press conference. He told me that they haven't met yet, but they're very similar. They've been at the same school for, it seems like forever. Coach Stig did not play football. He grew up as a farmer, grew up on a farm with his father, got into football, and he's been at South Dakota State forever. Now they've gotten to a point where they're right there. They've been in the semifinals 4 out of the last 6 seasons. They went to the national championship in the FCS 2 years ago. So they're trying to get what they call 1% better. And I'll give you guys an example of how they're trying to do that. They brought in 2 seasons ago a mental strength performance coach. This is a guy who, in a sense, basically the best I can describe it to you is almost in the sense of football therapist. They meet with this guy every week. They have one-on-one sessions. He goes and meets with their position groups. He talks to the team every Monday. I've had the privilege to sit in and listen to some of his talks. And every time, obviously, I don't play football. I'm not in the team. But every single time, I myself have taken something away from it. And that's the point, right? Because it's not just about football. It's about life. So they're scratching and clawing for anything that they're missing, that they're not doing to get to that point. And the biggest thing that you'll physically see on the field that's changed over the past 5 years, and I've talked to people about this because obviously I've only been here 2 years, but I've talked to people. The focus was on the offensive line. And if you look at their offensive line, they're pretty big. Across the board, they're going to be around, I haven't averaged it out yet. They just released the depth chart today. They're going to be about 6'4", 6'5", 310 across the line, average-wise. They got a couple guys, Mason McCormick, Garrett Greenfield, who are getting NFL looks. Every practice I've ever been to, there's been an NFL scout there. I've talked to them. Those are the 2 guys they first name in the offensive line. They've got some talent. So when you look at Coach Stig and what the coaching staff, as you asked, has tried to do, though, is get bigger, get more physical, and then find things that maybe aren't the typical way to get to that next step. That's what they're doing at South Dakota State.
Just for all the Hawkeye fans out there, Iowa's O-line right now averages 6'5", 315. So just to put it into perspective, right alongside of where South Dakota State is right now. So that's pretty impressive. With that being said, do they have quite a few guys coming back on the O-line other than those 2, or what is their depth looking like there?
So they returned 3 starters. Those 2 guys I just mentioned, Garrett Greenfield and Mason McCormick on the on the left side of the line. And then they have their starting center back who started the back half of the season last year in Gus Miller. And they welcome in 2 starters on the right side of the line. And I believe his name is John O'Brien. He's a transfer from Bowling Green. He takes over at, I want to say, right guard or right tackle. They've been flipping around these 2 guys. And then Bo Donald is another guy. So they have 3 starters returning from last year's team in the offensive line.
Awesome. You know, one thing that we talked about on our first episode, and obviously it's been talked about a lot, is the D-line depth, the defensive depth at Iowa too. So looking at that South Dakota State O-line, obviously I think a lot of Iowa fans are excited for that D-line just to get a taste of somebody other than, you know, who they're going up against every day. So that's exciting to know that they'll have some good competition right there. Week 1 against a very good FCS caliber team. I want to ask you one other question here too. I know you said that they lost Chris Oladukin last year to the NFL draft, obviously, you know, with the Pittsburgh Steelers now. Mark Granowski gets hurt, sits out the season. Chris comes in, plays. Now Mark's going to come back, hopefully get a shot at coming back and playing, you know, really good football. You know, how has he looked in the last couple of practices, and how does he, you know, look to build off of the year that he had 2 years ago after sitting out 1?
Well, you guys all understand college football at a high level, right? Usually when a freshman quarterback comes in and sets the world on fire, he's usually a redshirt freshman, right? Well, Mark Granowski 2 years ago came in as a true freshman, won the job, led them to the FCS National Championship. He was the runner-up as the FCS freshman of the season. Now, his next year, obviously this past season, he sat out the entire year with a torn ACL. It's almost like I've described it as his college experience for a quarterback is happening in reverse. Usually when a freshman jumps on the stage, their first year within a program, they're sitting behind a veteran, right? They're sitting on the sidelines and they're watching a veteran perform. That next year's when they take that jump. Well, he had a great year his first year. His second year is when he stood in the sidelines and watched a veteran and Chris Oladukin perform and have a great year. So he's kind of, you know, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of going in reverse. But now he's back in the field, and I've watched him throw many times in practice, and he looks very comfortable. There's no hesitation. He's very fluid, but he's got a black jersey on. He has not taken a hit yet. And that is where, you know, who knows? I mean, he'll be fine. But that first hit, you know, that's going to be people will pay attention to that first tackle. The whole sidelines, everyone will be watching that. And I think from there he'll be okay. But how's it going to affect his running game? Because if you pull up his stats, that's a big part of his game. I think he ran for over 600 yards his freshman year. He's a scrambler. He's a big dude. He's well built, 220, a legit 220. And that's part of his game. So will the hesitation be there? You can't tell that in practice yet because when he takes off, he knows he's not getting hit. And another thing I'd like to note about Granowski, he's had a great start to his career the year he played, but he never went up against anyone outside of the FCS. He did not play any FBS competition. And you guys know when you're coming back from an injury, there's going to be an adjustment period. But not only is there that for him, but he's playing up against a level of competition that he's never seen. And the Iowa defense is it's going to be nationally one of the better defenses as well. So this is going to be, he might come out. It might take him some time to settle in because he's up against legitimately something he's never seen.
I'd like to make a couple points for the Iowa listeners here. This guy, Mark Granowski, who Tanner's talking about, 1,500 passing yards, 15 touchdowns in the air. As he alluded to, running just shy of 600 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground too. So somebody that Iowa fans probably hate to hear they're going up against. So we haven't had a whole lot of luck against running quarterback. But guys, Rob and Dill, this kind of reminds me of somebody who come back off of an injury after a really good year. And his name is Michael Penix Jr. at Indiana. Coming back last year, was a huge run threat, had a big arm, a lot of praise coming back into this year. I'll ask it to Dill first, but after kind of looking through and seeing that comparison, does that align to what you guys think may even happen this weekend? That you see somebody with that ability and maybe a little sticker shock coming back against a solid Iowa defense?
Oh, without a doubt. I think there absolutely has to be some sticker shock coming in for him, and not only, being hurt and missing, the entire last season and being a backup to Chris Oladukin, but, just like we just heard where, you come into that FBS environment, a sold out Kinnick Stadium, just shy of 70,000 fans, and I know the Fargo Dome can get a little crazy. Don't get me wrong, because a few years back when North Dakota State came into Kinnick and beat Iowa, I had a few of the Fargo Dome season ticket holders behind me and about had to rumble with them, but cooler heads prevailed. But nonetheless, it's going to be a hectic environment. Everybody's going to be excited that football's back, and there's going to be some sticker shock, but he'll settle in. And obviously, Iowa's notorious for, mobile quarterbacks just giving them fits. And I think last year was a big step in kind of, pushing that off to the wayside a little bit, where they've really improved on the defensive front in that contain. You saw with Michael Penix Jr. last year, even Sean Clifford to, somewhat of an extent before he got hurt in that Penn State game as well. So I think that's a little bit more in the past, obviously knock on wood that Iowa struggles with those mobile quarterbacks. So I'm excited to see it. I guarantee the young man, he's a D1 quarterback for a reason. He's going to be fired up. He's going to love, this is his chance to play, with what he probably thinks that, he could have been, a D1 FBS quarterback essentially. So this is his time to shine. And yeah, I'm excited to see it. So that'll be a fun day for him.
I think it's, oh, go ahead. Sorry, Rob.
Sorry, I think it's going to be – I'm glad that you actually brought that up because I think it's going to be an interesting test. I don't know if you guys remember last year, but we played a Colorado State team, which actually so did South Dakota State. And I think South Dakota State beat Colorado State, and we were actually down to Colorado State at halftime, 14-7. And part of the reason was that they ran that read option where their quarterback was super mobile, and he was breaking off, chunks of yards at a time when he kept the ball or, gave it off. And it was sort of that option sort of situation in which we struggled with originally. Obviously we put the clamps on in the second half. We scored, looks like 17 points over the third and fourth quarter. We held them to nothing. We won the game 24-14, kind of how the game went. But I'm curious, Tanner, if Granowski is as mobile, after coming off of the ACL tear, I wonder if that's something that's going to give this team, similar fits.
I asked the coaches about what kind of their approach has been to Mark with running. And they really haven't given me too much, and I understand that. But I would have to imagine, and this is just me speaking, they have to be telling him, and Stig did mention that they want him getting down when he can. But as big of a game as this is, and it's big, right? This could be a program-changing game for South Dakota State. It really doesn't mean too much in their season in the big picture, right? Like they're not expected to win this game. This is not a Missouri Valley game. They don't want to lose Mark Granowski in week 1. So I would imagine that he might use his legs at some point, and he's going to have to. Like there's no question about it. He'll have pressure. But I don't think you're going to see a ton of called runs for Granowski like you saw 2 years ago.
I agree. Another question I had, speaking of our defense and what we're going to do to try to contain. So I saw on the roster, Jaden and Jackson and Jaden Janke,
Yonke. It's pronounced Yonke.
Yonke, sorry.
Yonke. Yeah, I got that one wrong too.
Twin receivers.
Yep.
They're both 6'3", 210.
Yep.
They're big targets. That's going to be something I'd be interested to watch our secondary matchup against.
Those two dudes, I actually did a big time feature story on them last year. They're literally clones. I mean, I interviewed their parents, and the mom told me that she would have to cut their hair different because she sometimes struggled to tell the difference between the two. That's how similar these two dudes are. I've actually got to know them pretty well. And when I was talking to a lot of people around the state about these guys, a quote that I heard from someone, in the know was South Dakota State was getting 2 Big Ten athletes. And if you look at them, and I've said this I tell all my buddies this back home, the quantity of good high school players in South Dakota does not meet Iowa, does not meet Ohio. But the kids who can play, can play. And those two kids are every inch of 6'2.5", 215. They're chiseled and they move well and they can play. Those two dudes are problems on the perimeter. Now, Jackson actually just got I think it's the Reese's Senior Bowl invite watch list or something. And that's a big deal. That means that's an FCS kid who NFL is clearly looking at. Jackson's the guy who's on that list, but his brother Jaden actually led the team in touchdowns a year ago. So those two guys are dudes who can stretch the field with their speed, but their route running is crisp. They are good athletes on the perimeter that they should be able to match up with Iowa. And that's the thing. I don't know that South Dakota State can so much match up with the Hawkeyes offensively that offensive line might be too much. That run game is going to be a lot. And I know the defense is legit, but so is South Dakota State skill players. There's a couple guys I want to talk about. We'll get into at the tight end position that you'll need to know about. But they've got skill on this offensive side of the ball. I'm telling you guys, can play at an FBS level.
Keep rolling. Who are the tight ends? Who are the running backs we need to keep our eye out for on Saturday?
All right, so you got the Yonke twins, and you need to know those two dudes. But the tight ends are the marquee names. And I'll start with Zach Hines. He's 6'7", 260 pounds. And the dude can play. He's got great hands. But remember this name. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I'll tell you he's a second-round draft pick. Maybe third, but I'm going to go second-round draft pick. Tucker Kraft. He's 6'5", 258.5 pounds, and the dude is a monster. He will be – I haven't studied Iowa's defense, and we'll see. But I would tell you, pound for pound, he might be the best athlete on the field. He is getting a ton of NFL attention. If you go look up the top tight end prospects right now, he'll be in the top 5 list across the country. He's an incredible athlete that, again, quite honest with you, has no business being at this level. But he played out 4 hours in the country of South Dakota. He played 9-man football. He was a quarterback in high school. And the kid's a monster. The kid is an absolute monster. And I promise you that the Iowa defense is going to have a guy on him at all times. So he might be more used as a decoy in this game, but at some point they're going to try and get him the ball because that dude is a caged bull. So keep your eye out on Tucker Kraft because that kid can play.
Sounds like Iowa will probably end up going with a 4-3 and playing a lot of Justin Jacobs to see if he can cover him out either in the flat or on the curl route there too, Dill.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what that reminds me of is coming into that Colorado State preview as well last year, with Trey McBride kind of being the marquee name. And I couldn't tell you what round he got drafted in, but yeah, that's crazy. We get 2 non-conference opponents 2 years in a row with top tier tight ends. So that's sweet. That's awesome to hear. But nonetheless, though, I think Justin Jacobs, with his coverage ability, he's going to be tested, but he's got the ability to hang with them. And that's going to be a fun matchup to watch for. I wouldn't have known that if you hadn't come on. So I appreciate that little tidbit.
You're welcome. Does Seth Benson play a lot for Iowa?
He's a starter.
He sure does.
Quick tidbit on him. He was committed to South Dakota State. He's from Sioux Falls. I'm sure you guys might know that. He was going to sign, and a week before signing with South Dakota State, Iowa offered him, and he took the offer. So he's very familiar with this program, and I'm sure he knows some of the dudes on the team. So that's something fun to watch for in this game, because Benson is really a hometown kid here from Sioux Falls.
You'll never guess who talked him into coming to Iowa too.
Who was that?
Hometown hero Chad Greenway.
Really?
Yes, sir.
No kidding. I did not know that.
Had a connection, obviously, from small town South Dakota. So pretty cool on that.
That's very cool. Another kid I wanted you guys to know about at the running back position. Now, last year, Pierre Strong, a stud, a home run hitter. He was drafted in the 4th round by the New England Patriots. He'll probably get some carries this year. He's a weapon. But the man behind him is a kid who's on the roster now, who is going to be the featured back this season. His name is Isaiah Davis. Now, to give you an idea of how talented Isaiah Davis is, last year he missed, I want to tell you, 9 games. He did not play a lot. He had a broken collarbone. Actually broke it right in front of me on the field. The year before, it was a shortened year, so keep in mind when I give you these stats, they only played, I think, 9 or 10 games. But Pierre Strong was on the roster. Isaiah Davis was the leading rusher. This kid is no joke. He's about 6'1", 220 pounds. And for anyone who's listening to this and a Hawkeye fan who isn't familiar with him, look up Isaiah Davis FCS National Championship 85-yard run. That will give you an idea of the kind of dude you're gonna see in this game. Now, will the holes be there? Will the offensive line hold up? I don't know. We'll see. But that is a kid who can be a problem. So the passing attack, that's got to be there as well. But do not count out Isaiah Davis in the backfield for South Dakota State making plays.
We've heard a lot about the South Dakota State offense, and I think not a lot has been talked about quite yet about Iowa's offense against your defense. And I think a lot of Iowa fans, for a good reason, have a right to be reserve on that too. What's going to cause us fits, and who should we look for on the defensive side of the ball there?
Well, I would start in the very middle, the heart of the defense. Actually, an Iowa kid. He went to Solon High School, which Adam Bach, that's his name. He told me it's about 15 minutes, I want to say, outside of Iowa.
Yep.
So this game is personal. And he told me he's going to have 100+ people in the stands for this game, which is super cool. So I would start with Mr. Adam Bach. He's the middle linebacker. He's a starter last year. He's the leader of that defense, about 6'1", 225 pounds. Really good physical player. That's exactly what you want in the middle linebacker. From there, I think this is what in my studies, I think this is the biggest drop-off from a really good FCS team to an FBS team. I think it's at defensive line. And here's why. Look at recruiting. If you're a high school kid and you're 6'4", 215, and you're a pretty good athlete, you're playing the defensive line, you don't have to have great numbers in high school because they'll take a chance on you, right? They can develop that. So there's not a ton of guys who, with that kind of athleticism and size, trickle down to the defensive line and the FBS side of football. So I think that's where South Dakota State could struggle. But they've got 2 guys who are returning on the defensive line who are all conference performers. Reese Winkleman, got Caleb Sanders. So they do have experience on the defensive line. And talking to the defensive coach, Christian Smith, he told me across the board they can go about 11 deep. So they've got a lot of depth at defensive line, and they're going to have to use it against the Hawkeyes. I will tell you guys at cornerback, there's a couple dudes who I'm pretty excited about. I think might have futures down the line. They have 2 guys starting in Malik Smith and Dyson Gales. Those are the two Malik Lofton and Dyson Gales. Those are the kids who start. The kids are going to play a lot too is Dallas Beanham and Stephen Arell. They're both about 6'1", 6'2". And those guys are the future. They're a little bit younger than the two starters, but they're going to get their minutes. And they're bigger corners who they can probably match up with Iowa. So how they'll do this will be a huge test for them. But those two guys, if they get their opportunity, it's this point of the season, it's so young where rotations obviously aren't set. This is a game where if you can show out and show you can stop a team like Iowa for South Dakota State, you're going to get in the rotation. So keep your eye on those guys. How they match up, I'm not sure. I did listen to Kirk Ferentz's press conference today. It seems like you guys have had a little bit of injury problems at receiver, if I'm not incorrect. So that could play into this ball game. So South Dakota State, I will tell you this about their defense. Across the board, experience. They've got about 9 starters back, a lot of guys who have played some good football.
I think Iowa's going to have to do their best to incorporate the tight end outside of running the ball too. So I have a pretty good feeling, and I'm sure all three of us do, but we're going to do the best we can to get Sam Laporta involved in a couple of those young receivers as well, just to try and get the ball out of Spencer Petras' hand and keep South Dakota State's defense on their heels.
Can I ask you guys a question? Oh, go ahead, Rob.
I was going to say, just looking at our depth chart currently as it stands, he's referring to Nico Reganey, who is injured currently. So it's going to be 2 sophomore receivers starting, and Keegan Johnson, Arlen Bruce, the 4th. Keegan Johnson had a lot of playing time last year. Arlen Bruce was kind of used sparingly in like 3 wide receiver sets and things like that. So those are guys that are going to be new to having a ton of playing time, and also out. We have some younger players who we might get to see, like Alec Wick, who's a redshirt freshman at receiver as well. But yeah, very young group, sort of have a lot to prove, which will be interesting. That'll be an interesting matchup to look at. But yeah, what's your question, Tanner?
So
Curious.
Growing up, probably still my favorite coach. I love Jim Tressel. I actually got to meet him a couple of times. And one of the running jokes was, and obviously he was a great coach and we had success with him, but one of the running jokes was 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And that kind of reminds me of the way Iowa plays. It's very conservative. You don't think of them as a team who's going to go chuck it around. Does the fan base get frustrated with that, or have they kind of like accepted it at this point that that's their style?
I could tell you there's a portion of the fan base that has accepted it and understood it, but there is probably a much larger portion of the fan base that gets very, very annoyed with the conservativeness, play calling, the taking knees on their side of the field with 50 seconds left in the half, like that kind of conservative stuff. So it's a little bit of both. I can tell you on both ends, I've both been frustrated and understood it at the same time. So it's tough, but it's just one of those things that is what it is. And it's probably even tougher for some of those older Iowa fans because, Hayden Fry came here, when the Iowa program was absolute dog shit back in 78 or 79 and, just lit the world on fire with going for 2 and, going for 2, going for it on 4th down. And then, Kirk Ferentz takes over in 99 and he's like, we're going to take it a little bit easy there and be a little more risk averse. But then again, Kirk's kind of graduated in his older age. And, I feel like he might be listening a little bit more to the kids and his son and that sort of thing. Cause we're seeing a little bit more, like you being a former Ohio State fan or maybe still current.
I still am. Yeah, I still am.
Yeah. Remember 2017 where, Iowa runs a fake field goal down in the red zone where it's like, what in the hell are they doing? And then it's like, oh shit, it worked, So you see.
Well, I remember you guys put up, I want to say you won 52-31 against Ohio State a couple years back. You guys
55-24. Can't forget
24,
it.
Yeah. You guys whooped the Buckeyes.
55-24. Mm-hmm.
I remember that game.
I'm sure they do too.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the style of play that Iowa, that Kirk Ferentz sort of is super old school. And if you were to be hanging out at any sort of Iowa tailgate, it would be a topic of conversation for sure, because it's playing basically not to lose.
Right. Yeah.
Is how some people would sort of interpret it. So it's very much a field position game. It's very much, I mean, people wear shirts that say punting is winning in Iowa. I mean,
That's good.
we have a great punter, Tory Taylor. He's an Aussie boy. He played Australian rules football, came over, obviously. Or he also played, I think he played rugby, actually. But either way, he can boot the ball pretty far. So it's good to have somebody like that as an asset on the team. But there are situations in which we will, purposely not try to go hit a home run on a 3rd and 17. We'll hit like a 5-yard out and we'll punt. And that's the tough part.
Yeah, and Tanner, I guess the best way to probably put it is, it's super frustrating when you're playing, quote unquote inferior teams, because that style of play, it allows them to stay in the game, right?
Right.
That's kind of the thought process there. But on the flip side, you're playing somebody with, visibly more talent all across the board, say like in Ohio State, where, if you can get Ohio State to play your game of football, you're going to have a chance with 5, 6 minutes left in the game. So it's
give and take.
Give and take, right.
It's to that point of Iowa's style. That's who they are. Well, for South Dakota State, this is a game where they're going to be pulling out all the stops. And I'll tell you guys, some of the trick plays that they have practiced in practice are pretty cool. Now, if they work in the game, we'll see. But if they do work, they're going to be something that's shown on ESPN Sports Center, because they're pretty cool. And I don't know if, what they're going through and what their plan is, but they at least have them in their back pocket, as does every team. But I would expect South Dakota State to be aggressive in this ball game, and as every smaller school should be. And they've got the athletes to do some fun stuff with. So, there could be a clash of style in this game in that sense, where Iowa's, believes in that they can win with their style, and maybe they can. But South Dakota State should I would expect them to be almost the total opposite of that.
Almost makes you wonder if they're even going to show their hand too, right? Like, I know that Iowa typically and other schools too typically don't show their hand in the first 4 games or so before they hit conference play, just so that folks don't have it on film later on down the road. So I know they're practicing it, right? But again, does this game truly matter? Unless, of course, it's close in the 4th quarter.
Yeah, good point. I would say this game, if I had to, I guess, pinpoint why it matters to South Dakota State, it's just a way to put yourself on the national map. And I guess with recruiting, I have a buddy back at home who played at Miami, Ohio. And what I have told him is there's kids who go to bigger schools and don't get their opportunity. And sometimes for, whatever reason, it just, they don't become what they could, because in a sense, they just don't get the chance. Maybe if South Dakota State, let's say they can pull off this win, maybe a kid who's thinking about going to a MAC school now sees this South Dakota State team, sees that they compete on the highest level. They play on national TV a couple times a year, right, with these games, and they're developing kids and they're sending them to the NFL. Well, how about I go here? And I'm getting on the field by my sophomore year. Now I have more time to develop. Now I have more time to show my tape. And I think that's something that I think people should pay attention to, because if you can play, they'll find you. But it's about proving that. And so for South Dakota State, if they can pull off a win like that, it kind of just it widens their brand. And also, too, people here in South Dakota care about Iowa football. Iowa basketball, at least they did last year, they played in Sioux Falls, and the place was packed. I mean, it literally was packed. So there is a draw for Iowa football up here in this part of the state, this part of the country. So this win really would be big, not just because it's an FCS team, but it's a Big Ten team. It's a bordering state team. So there is something to this game for South Dakota State.
Perfect. Well, that's a great segue for us to get into a favorite segment that we like to do with Dylan, which is called Dylan's Keys to the Game, and I will let him take it away.
All right. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. So we got the South Dakota State Jackrabbits traveling, I would guesstimate 5.5 hours, correct me if I'm wrong, Tanner, to the east to Iowa City. So offensively, the keys to the game are going to be establishing the run and establishing the run early. So I'm going to need to see I'm going to need to see some multiple fronts off of that offensive line. I want to see every possible combination we got in the book. And then once we find that starting five that works, I want to see it the rest of the game. I want to see the rock pounded. I want this game to be 14-0 at half. I'd be okay with 7-0 at half because I want to wear these guys down. You know, that's what kind of football game I'm looking for here. Just wear them down in the trenches. And then that's where you're going to see that score hopefully break away, you know, late in the third, early in the fourth quarter. So offensively, wear them down, pound the rock early on, throw a little play action pass in there every now and again and hit those tight ends, see what happens. Defensively, I just need them to do what they do. You know, I feel like if we can hold, like, I'm not going to be greedy. I'm not saying we have to shut South Dakota State out, but if we can hold them below 10 points, below 14 points, I feel very, very confident in coming away with a victory. And then special teams as well. Once again, just do what you do. You got the Aussie, the born mate from down under, you know, just do what he does. You know, you might have a few growing pains in there getting back into Kinnick. You might have a few touchbacks, that sort of thing. That's fine. Not a big deal. Let's get him back in shape. Let's get him going. And then special teams wise as well, I want to see these 2 field goal kickers, and I want to see them knock down 2, maybe 3 field goals. So, you know, and that probably doesn't sound popular to some fans, but I want to see what these guys got. You know, they had god-awful spring game. Now, that being said, they had 30, 40 mile per hour winds in that spring game. So not a big deal. Supposedly they haven't missed a kick since. So excited to see those guys. And basically those are my keys to victory. Offensively, do what we do, pound the rock, throw in that play action pass, and let's see what we got. Defensively, I mean, I don't even think we need to necessarily blitz a ton, mainly, you know, contain the quarterback, see what he's got mobility wise coming off that torn ACL. And we should be just fine there as well. Special teams, do what you do. Overall, stay disciplined, and we should be coming away with a victory. What do you guys think?
Love it, Dill. I think that's that would be a winning recipe. I think where we sometimes falter is outscoring the other opponent. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. I'm looking forward to the game, guys. Looking for the odds on this one was tough because I'm not sure if they've posted a whole lot currently. But what I could find right now, and this is the section I like to explain this to everybody who's listening for the degenerates, which we'll put in the chapters. If you're looking to bet, you can bet in Iowa. I don't know, is it legal in South Dakota to bet?
It's weird. On the west part of the state, you can in certain counties, but you can in Sioux Falls. How that makes sense, don't ask me, but yeah.
Interesting. Well, for those South Dakota State Jackrabbit fans who make the trip to Iowa City, you can bet. So you can download the DraftKings app, whatever app that you like to use. This podcast would be unofficially sponsored by DraftKings. But we can look at it. The spread I can find is Iowa minus 15.5 from OddsShark. And over under the consensus would be 44.5. So they have the score predicted for you there at 32-20. So knowing that, guys, getting that out there, I don't know if I would take Iowa in the spread, but it'd be interesting to bet the under, in my opinion, on this one. First game out, I think that I think the under. I would probably be betting on the under and Hawks money line. Let me know. I'm a conservative bettor. So, Dylan, what do you think? You're giving me looks over there.
Oh, absolutely not. This game has, you know, the classic Vegas where, okay, what Vegas knows, it's like, okay, yeah, Iowa's offense ended the season dog shit last year, but, you know, overall, and they still typically hit the under more often than they hit the over last year. But again, whole new offense, whole new offensive line, and that's where, you know, the bread and butter starts really. So the over under, I see what they're saying with that 44.5. I hate it. I'm going over. I think South Dakota State's got too good of an offense, and I think Iowa's going to be putting up some points as well. So we're going the over there. Iowa's also going to cover that 15.5 point spread, but it's not going to be by much. I'm thinking they win by 17. So game result, I'm going 34-17 is going to be the final result of said game. And I'm going to go ahead and skip up to hot takes too, or do we want to have that be a separate discussion?
Go for the hot takes. Let's do it all at
Just
once.
want me to roll with it? All right. Hot takes. Okay. I'm going Justin Jacobs with 2 interceptions this game. Hot take.
Wow, that's hot. That's hot. Yeah, so I'll take.
Sizzling.
I like what you had to say there, Dill. I like the over, and I like Iowa taking the spread too. My only thing that I'm nervous about is once Iowa gets a comfortable lead, if Kirk just wants to milk the clock, which he usually does. But I think that both offenses are going to be good. Honestly, I really like South Dakota State's defense, and honestly, I went back and forth on this one, but I have Iowa winning 32-13, which again would be taking the spread and the over. Then my hot take is that both Iowa running backs are both going to have 100 yards on the ground today or on Saturday. I think they're both going to tear it up. I think the offensive line is going to show out game 1, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun for our ground game. So I got the Hawks 32-13.
Perfect. I'll let Tanner go last here for the predictions. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I think Spencer Petras will be highly involved. I'm speaking that to manifest it into the universe. But my prediction is the Hawks win 21-10. I think that Spencer Petras throws for 2 and runs for 1. That's my hot take.
I like it.
Whoa.
Let's hear it, Tanner.
All right, so Dylan, I'm right there with you. I got the final score. I got 27-17 in favor of Iowa. I don't see them covering 15. The only way I think they do is if they get maybe a front door, a late touchdown for a front door cover. Then I could see them covering. But I like 27-17. And my hot take for all the Iowans out there, the South Dakota State Jackrabbits will have the lead at halftime.
I like that.
Gosh, deja vu of Colorado State. Everyone's going into halftime
Yeah.
chugging beers. Just, oh my God.
That's your hot take.
I
love it.
I like it. Okay. Well, and then before we do let you go then, Tanner, I want to hear, what are your keys to victory?
Well, the biggest key has to be for South Dakota State a good start. They have to get – they don't necessarily need a lead, but they can't fall behind because that's Iowa's game. If they can stick to the run game, I don't know that they can beat Iowa. But if they can force Petras to throw, then they might have a chance. And so if you can get – it doesn't have to be it could just be a field goal lead. Hang around until the half. You might have a chance because, man, if you go into halftime, it's even a one-score game. South Dakota State's got to be feeling good. They're going to feed off this crowd because they're not used to this kind of environment. 70,000 people, and everyone's I've heard so many cool things about Kinnick. I'm so sad that I can't go. Wish I could, but I've heard so many cool things about Kinnick Stadium. They'll be feeding off that crowd at that point if they're even in this ball game. So if South Dakota State can get off to a really good start, that's going to free them up mentally as well. And who knows where it goes from there. I'd say the other key in this ball game would have to be somehow, again, getting to 3rd down and long. You have to find a way to get the ball into the hands of Petras, make him prove himself in week 1. You can't do that. Could be a long afternoon.
I would agree with all those points there, Tanner. The games that have been close, or the games that we've lost, those teams have always all started off really strong. So, Hey, we appreciate you having to hop on the podcast. You were amazing. We can tell your talent over the virtual environment here. You've been excellent. Before you go, I'll go ahead and let you have the floor. Give us your Twitter handle, everything. Tell everybody how to find you.
So if you want to check out any of my stuff, it's just my name, Tanner, TANNER _Castora, CASTORA. I'm actually in the process right now of a write-up on South Dakota State football, and I've titled it What I've Seen, South Dakota State Football. And I'm just going to unload all my thoughts. I think that's the coolest part about my job. I'm in TV, so most of the things we do, I work with, I'm a photographer as well, really a videographer. We put together stories that people watch, but I've kind of used that into a way to gain a little bit of a following. And now I write. So I write on their website. And the cool thing about writing online is I have unlimited space. So I'm going to just put all my thoughts out there into this team. So, we've talked about these guys a little bit throughout the podcast, but for all those people who are still not super familiar with South Dakota State, including you guys, I'm going to put what I've seen in the 12 practices I've been to about South Dakota State, and I'll have that out on Thursday night.
Perfect. Well, we're going to close out this episode. Thank you so much. We're going to close it out as we always do with a little Hawkeye victory polka. Hopefully we will be able to celebrate to this nice little song at the end of the afternoon on Saturday. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you to Tanner once again. Go Hawks, you guys.